Hello everyone, and welcome to Andrew Broussard Watercolors. Today I'm going to play around with a minimal palette that was recommended, the Zorn palette. This palette is a 4-color palette that was used in oil painting. It was vermilion, yellow ochre, black, and white. And a few years ago I played around with it in gouache, and lately I've been trying it in pure watercolor. What I'm using for it is vermilion, yellow ochre, Payne's gray, and buff Titan. And then at the end I'm using Dr. P.H. Martin's bleed proof white. With this, when I played around with it a few years ago, I used the gouache, and it worked out reasonably well. It's a lot of fun. It's a great palette for portrait and figure work. I just don't do enough of it to really be adept at it. So I figured I'd do a video sketching and having fun. And I'm going to look at a Boldini painting as kind of a reference just for a figure. The buff Titan buff, is kind of a tan, creamy color. It does give a little bit of an issue. When I would use the gouache, I'd use the white gouache, but I was trying to avoid using that with this just solely watercolor type palette. Anyway, so in front of me I have some Stonehenge Aqua. I marked it off to about 8 by 10 if I wanted to just throw a mat over it to see what it looked like. I had to cut it a little bit wider to attach it to my board. I'm going to use a number 1 rigger to map out this this figure. I'm going to take the vermilion and mix it with the Payne's gray. Use that almost as a sketching color. Now, what I'm going to use is the 8-head method, where I'm marking the top of the head. I'm going to mark the bottom of the feet, about here, halfway between those, and then break it up into 1, 2, 3, about 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 equal spots. 1, 2, 3, 4 equal spots, give or take. It's just a kind of general proportion for drawing figures. Haven't done any figure stuff in a long time, except for the other day, and the reception was like really good. But I was mainly just looking for feedback on different ways of looking at faces on such a small scale. Watercoloring faces on such a small scale is so difficult for me. Here would be the groin region, where this lady's hip would be. Her hip comes out quite a bit. Waist, bosom, top of the bosom, knee, I believe, is in this area. So even though the dress is obviously covering up a lot of these features that I'm talking about as I'm just kind of sketching out, I'm marking them so I get the proportions right, and then I'm going to have the clothes hang off of those spots. Now, Boldini was like the guy to have your portrait painted from, and he was just the absolute master. I think he was the nicknamed Master of the Swoosh, and there's just so much movement in his brush strokes. It's just fantastic. And the Zorn palette, a limited palette, I believe it's accredited to Anders Zorn. I think that's his name. I think he was quoted as using a limited palette of this nature, but he, I think, obviously had used some other colors within it. It was kind of just like a very basic starting point. And you could use the black and the yellow ochre for green mixes. So the black takes the place of blue. You can mix the black with the white for light blues or light grays that would resemble blues. The vermilion could be replaced with, I think, cadmium light if you don't have that, or maybe a Venetian red I was reading somewhere. It's just a very limited palette that is just fun. But how on earth you use it for landscape, I'm still not sure. I need to buckle down one day and just try it for landscape painting. I really don't draw anything out before I paint. As you can tell, I'm just using the paint itself. And that dog is just being clutched against her. I'd looked at this painting the other day, or at least the online image of it, and I had thought, how on earth did he capture that scene with that dog? That arm just comes so close to the body and then comes out here. We'll hook it right there. Once I get that general shape, that hand comes out here, just kind of referencing off of other angles. I was looking on I think Pexels and Pixel Bay for women in dresses for me to paint off of. I really do enjoy doing stuff like this, but it's so hard to find pictures that would work. I could probably use some stuff as a basis, but I like that old Victorian look with a ball gown type stuff. I'm just not sure where to find those pictures to paint from. I might have to start looking at my friends' Facebook pages and look for like wedding photos and stuff and just like sheepishly ask them if I can use them to paint from them. Anyhow, I'm going to put in this a wash for the background now. I don't really have a set pattern yet. Like I said, I had done these 2 years ago in gouache and in oil, and now playing around again with watercolor. Not really going to chase the colors of the original painting too much. Just going to use some of the forms. This brush is a Paul Rubens squirrel mop off a number 6 off of Amazon. About 18, 20 bucks. Good brush. I usually use the hake brush, but I really don't see how I'd utilize them for this. That side. Like that. dry brush and I'm going to switch over to the number 4 rigger so I can put more pigment down. I don't think anything's dried, so I'll probably be picking up paint and moving it around and muddying it while I do this, but it should be fine. So this is vermilion, which does actually quite suit the dress that this woman's wearing in this painting. And when I had played around yesterday or 2 days ago with this palette, I felt like I was going very heavy with it eventually, very thick, where it felt very much, why am I just not using gouache if I'm going to paint this thick? Right now it's just light washes, but we'll see if that winds up happening again. I was looking through the Bridgeman's guide yesterday. This is a mixture of the Buff Titan and the vermilion. So you can see how it has a creamy, I'm just trying to get a slightly pinkish, just to start putting this in. This is kind of, I don't know what you call it, like this long gloved piece of clothes that also covers the upper body. A dress. Yeah, it's just part of the dress. Anyway, I was going through the Bridgeman guide. He was an old drawing instructor. And the Bridgeman guide, at the last section, the last chapter, one of the compilations, was on the folds of clothing, how it falls into different categories, no pun intended, where one fold, awkwardly and interesting enough, is called the diaper fold, where you'd have something hit here, and how it would drape across, and you'd look at the fold from there. He had some other folds. I think one was the pipe fold. Interesting stuff. I don't comprehend all of it or have it all cataloged in my mind yet, but I think it's a good starting point to looking at and understanding fabric. This is just a lighter wash, which we're going to have to play around with. I obviously don't want those dark marks on the shoulder, so just kind of scrubbing up a little bit of my sketch. Head will tilt that way. Like I said, I don't have any set approach just yet, just been playing. This is the Payne's Gray, just to start mapping that in. The Payne's Gray suggestion came from an online article of the Zorn palette by Jane Blundell, who, when she tried out this palette in watercolor, used her mix that she calls Jane's Gray, which is burnt sienna and what is it? It's burnt sienna and ultramarine, which mix for a dark, for a gray, for a black. Not a black, but a dark. And Payne's Gray was, I think, just a triad of colors originally mixed together. Nowadays, Payne's Gray, most companies, is just a black and a blue. This is the stronger, thicker application of that buff tighten. That hip is important. I'm going to do a dry off in a moment, but hopefully you can see that I'm getting quite thick with the pigment and texture. Okay, I'm going to close the camera for a dry off. All right, so quick dry off. We're about 15 minutes into the video already, and I feel like I haven't even begun to ramble. Here's a little bit of that Payne's gray. I'm going to bring this over here and sharpen that to drop there. I want to drop that as well. Just adjusting stuff. I think for this video at this point, I'll talk about the issues that I'm facing with it and reflections on the Bridgeman's guide and folds. So the first issue that I'm having, and I've mentioned it a few times, is that using the buff tighten, titanium buff, is just going to cause a lot of trouble. Just it's just a cream color. I'm going to try to mix whites from it, and it's just not going to happen. It's a nice color, and I think it'll give a good strong base underneath, but at the end, taking that bleed proof white and using that for the highlights is what will make it work. I might just have to, bite the bullet and say I'm going to use white gouache in future ones. It might just be worth solely using gouache in the future. This is just kind of a watercolor challenge for me, trying these. But like I said, the reception was very positive. I was very excited about that, and some of the comments were like really cool that people had made where they were surprised that it was watercolor. So I think something right is taking place. This is mixing the buff tighten with the vermilion, and I'm trying to shape the body. Back in 2011, when I was getting my alternative certification to teach, I was taking art classes as well at UL, University of Louisiana. I'm gonna get that ribbon out here. So there's a ribbon coming from here and it's coming up. It's swooshing. I think letting the brush just kind of move and fall the way it wants to is part of the fun with this. Okay, so anyway, while I was doing my alternative certification to teach, I was also taking art classes at the same time. And one of the art classes that I had taken was a life drawing class, and we used charcoal. We'd have charcoal in one hand, and we would have an eraser in the other. And it was just amazing what I learned from that class. And I feel like I utilized that in the tonalist watercolor style, where I'll apply, I'd apply and wipe off, apply and wipe off, and it'd be back and forth. A lot of focus on direction of the strokes, of texture of the strokes. I felt like I truly started understanding how to create three-dimensional objects. And that class has kind of always been in the back of my mind. And it was just fantastic. Seeing people's before and afters from that class. Yeah, everybody just grew immensely. Anyway, the other thing is looking at how everything's sitting in regards to Bridgeman's guide and the type of folds that are happening. Even though this is a painting that I'm looking at, I'm still going to have to reduce the folds into just ones that make sense to me. And it's amazing how many folds he created, Boldini, in this painting. And looking to see how the hip catches it and then drapes down, and then from there we have the folds break up. Through studying Bridgeman, I think that application will make sense more and more. But I don't think that's a one-day affair, looking at that and learning. So that'll be something that I'll just have to reflect back on. Sometimes his writing is, I don't want to say vague, but almost like Buddhist or religious scripture type stuff, where it's phrased in a fashion where you're like, where it's very simplified, but you're also thinking, no, it's not apparent. I'm not sure what you're saying. For example, phrases like, it should be apparent to the artist that, and it's like, well, no, it's not. Okay, well, I have this Titan buff Titan, which honestly is just a good skin color if you want to use it as a skin color replacement. I think this shape coming up into that neck, crossing here, there we go. I'll put the highlights on this side. I posted on a few pages asking, advice, tips, hints, anybody who painted small faces, and two people in particular, and I don't know their names. They one had shared ideas of just kind of a gestural face in this fashion, and another had shared a little step-by-step of their approach to faces with little markings and what have you. And it was just nice that two people went out of their way to try to help me with that. I don't have a clear answer yet on how to do it, but people reaching out like that and helping out in that fashion was just really great. This is just the Payne's Gray for the dog. Yeah, one of those ladies that I was talking about had did sequences of faces and skin tones in from different cultures, different ethnicities, and it was cool seeing that as well. And there's that whole genre of art, right? I don't know if you would say urban sketch artist, and it had that vibe to it, which I've always appreciated but never been able to achieve. But also, I'm not somebody who's capable of sitting outside a cafe and painting the people that I see. From what I understand, until I open my mouth, I'm a pretty imposing figure. So if I was to sit there staring at somebody, sketching somebody, or them not knowing what I was doing, it might not be perceived well. I know in videos where I put myself on the YouTube channel, people are surprised. Just creating some of that movement. I'll take, oh, that was my elbow. Start layering some color here. I noticed that the hair will have to take me a few passes to build up what I would think would be interesting. But I am going to pause and do a dry off so we can touch the background again. So I love how loose Boldini's backgrounds are. And when I look at Anders, I hope I'm saying it right. I think it's Anders Zorn, the namesake of this palette. He had really cool backgrounds. Kind of just the idea, the impression of doors and stuff, just like this one. That's 2, 1. All right, a little bit more Payne's gray in the mix. Okay. What I have to do now is another dry off, because if I hit that edge, it starts bleeding out into that. Okay, so we're about 30 minutes in, so I'm going to try to wrap this up in the next 10 minutes. This is strong vermilion. Not a pigment strong vermilion, just stronger vermilion on the brush. And this is where I started questioning, why am I not just using gouache? I don't know if it's the quality of my paints where I want that vibrancy, but I have to use large quantities of it. I am using the Van Gogh brand, or Cotton brand. Yeah, these are Van Gogh and then Da Vinci. But those colors and those brands have suited me so far for everything else. It might be that, this obviously isn't real vermilion. It's a mixture of synthetic. So that might be part of it. I'm not quite sure. So let me know what you think down below. In the comments, we'll add a little bit of this to that hair. Then we'll just grab strong Payne's Gray. Oh, that's like gopping. Is that a word? Gopping? Globbing? Essentially just blocking in the dog. Let's see. Let's use the pigment on my hand. Just push that throughout. Let me switch to the number 1 rigger. We'll try to eyes about halfway through the face, the head. And this is where I struggle. In fact, I found the best way for me to do this is to have a paper towel in my hand as if I'm oil painting and pull off the brush, pull off pigment and water off the brush between each part. I'm just going to try just the mere gestures. And one recommendation was just the lightest shift of shifts. To create. This is 8 by 10, which painting a facial features on a little thumbnail is what's hurting me. Then once it starts getting wet, it wants to move around. Some more layers in that hair. I'm gonna try to, I might put some white right here to drop that shoulder, just to pull back. Let's see. I'll come back to the face in a moment. Let's grab the bleed proof white. We'll put some of our little accents on. Now, I will say this. The bleed proof white is so strong and so vibrant. It really has felt like a almost like a cheat tool, but I really don't think there are any cheat tools in art. It is just very helpful. The other thing I will say is masking fluid will probably be helpful. Instead of just using bleed proof white, masking out spots. But you saw the way I prepped the painting, that I literally just sketch with the brush and lay things out. But masking fluid might be the key for you all. Let's see. There's just so much action on the dress. I will test it out just by seeing if we put bleed proof white right here, if we can use it to help drop that shoulder. We can. Almost like a masking white. Probably even pull on the side right there. Okay, I want to pause for a quick dry off. Right, the bleed proof white doesn't seem to dry as fast as the watercolor, but I did want to just do a dry off so I can accent the forehead, the cheek, and the chin with this white. And then from there, see what we can do. Okay, let me put the cap back on. I do think it says that it's not for mixing. Does it say that anywhere? Where am I getting that idea? Stir well before using opaque watercolor. Always replace cap. I did not stir well at all. I didn't even shake it. Oh. Okay. Get the idea of the eyebrow. Now, let's darken that side up a little bit. Shadow. Some vermilion for the lips. Oh. Okay, let me pause for a dry off. All right. Now I'm going to play around with throwing in splashes of color. I think the Payne's Gray got in there and it just gave kind of that dead flesh colored look. I could throw this yellow ochre in the dress. In fact, there is that swirls coming around. Let's grab the number 4. Wish I had quite a bit of Payne's Gray on it still. You can see on the palette the green that it makes with Payne's Gray. know if that's helping or hindering. All right, let's here. Number 1. Okay, I think blocking in the entire eye helps. That looks a little creepy, but it helps. Flesh color over the top of that creepy block in then should help. And then the eyelid, the eyebrow will sit right on top of that. And I could bring that down here. A little bit more growth to the hair. I don't want the spikes coming out. We don't want Medusa or Lady Liberty. Let's see if we can get pinpoints of the bleed-proof white in there. I think the one lady I was talking to was saying that she uses a size 0 rigger, but I don't have that. I have the number 1. By the way, I don't know if, I think I'll put this one up on YouTube for the whole world to enjoy. We'll see what y'all think. It has a kind of Betty Boop-ish type feel to it. The eyes. That red that just creeped up into that puddle. That's where I have so much trouble with this this small scale. All right, let me pause and do one last dry off, and we'll see if there's anything else we want to play with. Actually, before the pause, I think we should throw a bit on the side back in here. The colors are starting to get muddy now. Let me do that. No, I think that helped. I should sound more confident, shouldn't I? That totally helped. I think within painting, or at least painting videos, there's the different type of confidence. Or you have the fun confidence of Bob Ross, which is totally fine. Everybody could get down with that. But some confidence is a little too overbearing. Some forms of it. I guess cockiness would be the type that's overbearing. I don't know if I want to leave that little gap right there. There we go. Am I pushing the bleed proof white? Okay, I'm going to pause for dry off and then we'll sign it. Okay, so while it dried, I threw a few little splashes of vermilion onto the dog's face. Let's see. All right, so we're going to assign it Andrew Broussard after Boldini. I hope you enjoyed. With most of these videos, I do them as tutorials, but obviously these are just more experimental. Feel free to follow along. Feel free to play around with this style. I mean, I'd love to see what you all come up with. If you do, I'd love to see your result. Let me know what ideas you all have. It's definitely a fun approach. If you'd like to support this channel, sorry, let me just spell Boldini right. Boldini, yeah. Feel free to check out one of my links down below, either the Patreon or I do have the Etsy shop, which I really need to update. But if there's ever anything you want, just hit me up. Let me know. And there we go. All right, I hope you enjoyed, and y'all take care. Have a great day. Bye.